cold cases are infuriating and heartbreaking for everyone involved, from the victims' families to local police departments, and even true crime fans that want nothing more than to see the case solved. In some instances, these cases can be cracked by the right person coming forward with the right information. Remember that no piece of evidence is too small or insignificant to make a difference. Here are 5 cold cases that need to be cracked. Number 5. Jane and John Doe cases are heartbreaking. In most instances, not only is the identity of the killer unknown, but the identity of the deceased is unknown too. It's hard to think that a family out there is missing a loved one, not knowing that they could have died under horrific circumstances. It's also heartbreaking to think that a person can lay unclaimed for decades without a single person looking for them, forgotten to the sands of time. The Lady of the Dunes is no exception, but in her case, we have a bit more information than we do with Doe cases. We possibly have video footage of her in the months before her death. On July 16, 1974, a white female between the ages of 20 and 49 was found in Race Point Dunes, Provincetown, Barnstable County, Massachusetts. Her postmortem index was estimated to be anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks, and her cause of death is simply listed as homicide by blunt force trauma to the head. She was discovered laying on her back, completely naked and lying on a beach towel. To investigators, it appeared as though she'd been sunbathing or asleep. Jane Doe had been sexually assaulted with an object and had been strangled, but the cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma, as most of the left side of her skull was crushed. Even more bizarrely, her hands had been removed along with some of her teeth. A forensic anthropologist was able to examine what was left of her teeth and commented that she had extensive dental work that would have cost between $5,000 and $10,000. The Lady of the Dunes is described as being a white female with auburn hair. When she was discovered, her head was resting on a pair of Wrangler jeans and a blue bandana, but this will become important later on. Provincetown police worked tirelessly to find the identity of the woman, who'd simply become known as the Lady of the Dunes, but to no avail. Her body was exhumed twice, once in 1980 and again in 2000, hoping that advances in forensic technology could give them something. It wasn't until 2015 that the son of the famous horror author Stephen King, Joe King, came forward with the bizarre theory. Joe claims that the Lady of the Dunes may have been an extra in the 1975 film Jaws. Filming for Jaws had taken place in Massachusetts in 1974, and in one scene, a young woman is seen wearing a bandana and jeans. Authorities have brushed this off as being a wild coincidence, but others are convinced that the extra from Jaws is the Lady of the Dunes. If you have any information, you're urged to contact the Provincetown Police Department at 508-487-1212. Number 4. On November 26, 1984, 2 truck drivers making their way down the A45 in Germany came across a scene that will haunt them forever. On the side of the road, they saw an almost completely crushed blue Volkswagen Golf. Both truck drivers rushed to the scene, and given the condition of the car, they were not expecting to find any survivors. As they approached, they saw a man slumped over in the front seat, completely naked and covered in dirt. The man was identified to be Gunther Stoll, an unemployed man from Enhosen, and in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, he'd been making bizarre claims to his wife. On the evening of the incident, Gunther frightened his wife by exclaiming, "Now it's all clear to me." He grabbed a pen and wrote down the letters YOGTZE before running out of the house and jumping in his Golf that would later be found crushed. It's known that after leaving his house at 11 p.m., Gunther went to his favorite local bar. He ordered a pint as usual, but before he was able to drink it, he fell to the ground and was knocked unconscious. Instead of going to the hospital, Gunther jumped into his car and sped off into the night. The last confirmed sighting of Gunther was at 1 a.m. when he was in a nearby town. He's known to have spoken to a woman whom he grew up with and kept mentioning something will happen tonight, something terrible. The woman said he was more than welcome to stay at her place for the night, but he refused and jumped back into his car. According to the truck drivers that discovered Gunther, he wasn't alone. In the car, there were 4 other people who had run off when they saw them approaching. Gunther said they weren't his friends and they'd run off as Gunther was on the brink of death. He began mumbling and murmuring incoherent sentences. Sadly, no further information was obtained from Gunther, and he passed away on the way to the hospital. Police have never been able to track down the other men with him that evening, nor have they been able to figure out what the letters YOGTZE mean. It was even determined that Gunther had sustained his injuries elsewhere and had been placed in the Volkswagen Golf where he was found. What do the letters YOGTZE mean? Are these ramblings of someone whose paranoia led to their untimely death, or was Gunther involved in something much bigger and scarier? If you have any information about the death of Gunther Stoll, you're urged to contact the local police department at 02331 986 2069. Number 3. For 27 years, Janice McCall has been left wondering what happened to her 18-year-old daughter, Stacy. On June 6, 1992, Stacy, along with her friend Susie Streeter, aged 19, celebrated their graduation from the Springfield Kickapoo High School. Surrounded by friends, they partied and said their goodbyes, knowing that for some, it would be the last time they saw each other before everyone went off to college. After the party had died down, Stacy and Susie planned on crashing at Susie's house that she shared with her 47-year-old mother, Cheryl Levitt. The girls were planning on visiting the local water park the next day, so it made it easier to have a sleepover. June 7th rolled around, and friends were wondering where Stacy and Susie were, thinking perhaps they'd partied a little too hard the night before they left, causing them to sleep in a little bit longer. At 9 a.m., Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend decided to go to the 1717 East Delmar Street home to see if the girls still wanted to go to the water park or if they wanted to stay home. Upon arriving, Janelle noticed that the front door was unlocked and the porch light had been broken. Thinking that she was doing them a favor, she cleaned it up, destroying precious evidence. While inside of the home, an obscene call was made by an unknown male caller. Janelle claims that the man was making sexual innuendos. She quickly slammed the phone down, only for another call to come in moments later. Janelle and her boyfriend left, thinking the 3 women had gone on about their day with other plans in mind. It wasn't until later that day that Janice McCall, the mother of Stacy, visited the house after she hadn't been able to get a hold of her daughter. When she went inside the house, she found the 3 women's belongings neatly placed in the living room. All of their bags were there, and there were even clothes from the previous day. All 3 women had left everything behind: clothes, perfume, purses, keys, and cigarettes. They'd simply vanished without a trace. Police believe that all 3 women were in the house that evening, but have no clue what happened to them. With McCall's mother, Janelle Kirby, and others visiting the house that day, the crime scene was heavily contaminated, and police fear that any clues that may have been left behind were destroyed before they arrived on the scene. The case was quickly dubbed the Springfield 3, and despite over 5,000 tips, police are still no closer to figuring out what happened that day. The police theorize that the women were attacked by an intruder and taken to an unknown location. Stacy McCall is described as a white female, 5'3" and 120 pounds, with blue eyes and blonde hair. She has freckles and a dimple in her chin. Cheryl Levitt is described as being 5 foot, 110 pounds, with brown eyes and short bleached hair. She has a slender build and has freckles on her neck and chest. Susie Streeter, Cheryl's daughter, is described as 5'2", 102 pounds, with bleach blonde shoulder-length hair. She also has large teeth and a 3.5-inch scar on her right forearm and a tumor on the left corner of her mouth. If you have any information about the disappearance of Stacy McCall, Susie Streeter, or Cheryl Levitt, there's a $42,000 reward for any information. You're urged to contact the Springfield Police Department at 417-864-1810. The case of Jill Dando is one of the most interesting and baffling cases in British history. Since 1999, the Metropolitan Police, along with the BBC, have tirelessly chased down every possible lead in hopes of solving her case. Jill Dando is described as being the golden girl of British TV. She appeared on the 6 o'clock news, BBC Breakfast, and the popular true crime show Crime Watch. Jill was adored by all that she worked with and had fans all over the world for her charismatic and lively personality. The UK would come to its standstill when the BBC, the very place that she worked for, began reporting on the tragic demise of the Golden Girl. On April 26, 1999, Jill, who was 37 at the time, returned to her home in Fulham after spending the night with her husband-to-be. As she walked towards her front door, an unknown gunman grabbed her from behind and forced her onto the ground, taking her life. The gunman quickly fled the scene and Jill was laid out on the doorstep. There are many theories when it comes to who killed the Golden Girl of British TV. The two most plausible are that she was either taken out by an obsessive stalker, or she was taken out to keep her quiet about an exploitation ring that she was preparing a full report on. Conspiracy theorists believe that Jill Dando was very close to unearthing the full truth behind Jimmy Savile and other entertainers within the BBC, who've since been proved to have been involved in the exploitation of children. They believe that Jill got too close to the truth and was planning to write a full expose, tell-all report, and pass that information over to the Metropolitan Police. To save themselves, someone inside the ring ordered a professional hit on Jill, not only to silence her, but to make an example of her. If you have any information about Jill Dando, you're urged to contact the Metropolitan Police at 4420-7230-1212. Number 1. The Monster of Florence is an Italian serial criminal responsible for taking the lives of 16 people in the hills of Florence, Italy, between 1968 and 1985. All of the victims were young couples who were parked along different lovers' lanes. He would always strike under a full moon, but used an assortment of different methods to take the people's lives. Many have speculated that he targeted young couples because of his inability to find a suitable partner, and therefore hated the idea of romance. At the first crime scene, he left behind a 6-year-old boy who was asleep in the back of the car. He was in the car as he had accompanied the mother, Barbara Locci, on a date with her boyfriend, Antonio Lobianco. For whatever reason, the monster took only Barbara and Antonio's lives, leaving the little boy unharmed. What's even stranger about this case is that the boy awoke hours later, only to be confronted with the horrific sight of his mother and Antonio in the front seat. He managed to travel 2 kilometers to a nearby home. When the homeowner opened the door, the boy said, quote, "Open the door and let me in. I'm sleepy and my daddy is sick in bed. Then I need you to drive me home because mommy and uncle are dead in their car." The little boy claims that the quote-unquote uncle had driven him to the house and instructed him to ask for help before driving off into the night. It's to be noted that the boy would call his mother's lovers uncle. Years later, he would say that he was alone that night, and then changed his story to say that he was in too much shock to remember what happened. While many men have been investigated, interrogated, and taken to trial, no one has ever been formally charged as the Monster of Florence. One investigator even believes that the Monster of Florence and the Zodiac could be the same person. It seems only time will tell if they're right. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.